Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. For today's midweek meta deck, we are playing Prime Time's Legacy Challenge winning Blue-Black Reanimator deck. Yep, that's right, Blue-Black Reanimator hasn't gone away. In fact, it's doing better and better week on week as we go into this format right now. I'll just pull up the stats, which is something I collate on my Patreon. So as you can see, if we look at the overrepresentation rate, this is how well a deck performs against its meta share. And if we look, the number 3 deck at the moment on this metric is Blue-Black Reanimator. Now, there's a few decks, in and around that same area, but Blue-Black Reanimator is still one of the better decks that you need to be aware of in Legacy right now, and it's been gaining in popularity over the last few weeks as well. So, what is this deck trying to do? Well, we have this package of 11 cards. We have 4 Entombs, which you can go and find at Archon of Cruelty or Atraxa. And then we have 4 Reanimates and 1 Animate Dead. So this tiny little package here allows us to play the biggest, scariest monsters that a Reanimate deck would normally play, whilst also playing a fair deck at the same time. So our fair deck, we've got our Ponders and Brainstorms to, find our Entombs or make sure that we don't have Entombs when we're trying to do the fair plan and we don't necessarily want to go through our graveyard. We've got Brazen Borrowers as like a nice utility piece that can also beat down. Orcish Bowmasters, don't really have to say much about this card. Tamiyo, which has been one of the more impressive cards from recent sets. Just sometimes a turn 2 Planeswalker that just runs over the game is very, very strong and your opponent has to respect it. And a couple of Murktide Regents, the big daddy dragon we all know and love. We've got ourselves some Force of Will and Dazes to protect what we're doing, or to stop what our opponent's doing, which is really important in this metagame with Oops or Spells being so strong. And then we have 4 Thoughtseize, again another piece of interaction, this time a nice 1-for-1 piece that we can punch holes through to make sure we secure our combo, or that we can just take out something that's going to overrun our fair plan. This list manages to play 4 Wastelands in its 19 land suite, which is one of the things that people were concerned about with trying to build Blue-Black Reanimator after the Troll of Khazad-dûm ban, whether or not you could still play your 4 Wastelands, but this build has managed to fit them in, but we are going up to 19 lands. We have an Undercity Sewers, 4 underground seas, 1 of each basic, so we do get to play on basics quite often, and that's pretty much the deck. It's very efficient, we all know roughly what it's doing, and it's still one of the best things to be doing in Legacy. Sideboard-wise, if we need to go further into the fair plan, we've got Barrowgoyf and Dauthi Voidwalkers. We've got a little bit more counter magic. We've got some different stripes of counter magic for some of these like colorless combo decks like Karn Forge. We've got some removal because we don't really have any of that in the main outside of the Archon of Cruelty and bouncing stuff. So we've got Shoulder's Edict, Go for the Throat, and 2 Fatal Pushes, as well as a Engineered Explosives, which is a nice thing that can blow up things like Grafdigger's Cage as well, and a Ghost Vacuum for a little bit more graveyard hate when required. So that, lovely people, is the deck we're playing today. This deck is really good. It's been for a long time now, and I don't think it's going to show any signs of slowing down. If anything, I think it's going to improve its success now that sort of these builds have been found. Alright, please remember to like and subscribe, and let's just jump into it with Prime Time's Legacy Challenge winning Blue-Black Reanimator list. If you've been watching my content and thinking, I'd like to play some Legacy too, then check out 3for1 Trading, one of Europe's leading Magic the Gathering retailers. They have weekly offers and upload new cards every Wednesday. And it's not just Legacy stuff they sell. They have a beautiful selection of vintage and old school cards too. Support from sponsors like 3for1 Trading make it possible for me to put out videos and help keep Legacy alive, so why not give them some love? Click their link in the description below and use my code COW3 to enjoy free worldwide shipping on your first order over €500. So our opener for the first round is kind of an interesting one. We kind of have 2 duds in here, but we could like maybe shuffle them around with a Brainstorm or whatever. We could go for the really risky play of Thoughtseizing ourselves and reanimating the Atraxa that way. Or we could just mulligan and try and have a more stable hand with some cantrips and things. I think that's probably the better play. Island Ponder, I will keep this one. I think we are going to... We have a lot of Ponders here, actually. I think... I quite like where our hand is, so I don't know if we actually need this Brainstorm. But I don't want to put away a cantrip and then not be able to find a land. So I think we're going to put away a Force of Will and be prepared to use a Brainstorm or a Ponder into this Force of Will. If our hand's good and we don't need to fix it, then the Ponder is better than Brainstorm. A Volcanic Island. We're going to be seeing some tempo, perhaps? There's a few varieties of tempo out at the moment. The best performing is Grixis Tempo, but I think Blue-Red Delver is pretty good too. A Mishra's Bauble. Okay. I'm certainly getting some Blue-Red Delver vibes. And they draw their card with the Bauble, and they see that we drew a Daze. Okay. Let's ponder. Let's look towards some more land drops, please. This is not really what we're after. So I think I'm going to any order and shuffle this one. Alright, so we found the land that we were looking for. Excellent. So now we have access to both of our basics, so we don't have to worry about Wasteland, which is one of the strengths of our deck. We just have single colour pips for a lot of our spells. I think it's just the Borrower, maybe? The Borrower and the Murktide are the 2 double pip cards, I think. We're not clearing Force of Will because we're not really casting this for 5 mana. A Wasteland. Alright, we can play around this without any problem. Another Bauble. So this tells us that our opponent doesn't have Corey Steelcutter in their hand, because you would save this so that you can play the cutter and make a guy. Which means the threat they're on has to be Murktide at the moment. So I could Brainstorm here, but what are we brainstorming towards? We have a Bowmaster, we can impact our opponent's board as and when we like. I think we're just going to pass it over here. If we need to brainstorm in an emergency, we can do that. A Brainstorm. I would be remiss to not at least attempt this. This is not really how I like to use my Bowmasters, but this is a lot of value to suddenly swing in the game. This will also give us a 4/4 if it resolves, which is going to be hard for our opponent to deal with. Alright, they are forcing. I think I'm willing to force back here. Alright, we're in with the Bowmasters. So the things our opponent's shown us tells us that they're going to be a fair deck. You know, Wasteland, Bauble, Force of Will, stuff like that. So I'm happy to just get this in, get a creature that's going to be bigger than Lightning Bolts, and also, you know, disrupt our opponent's future ability to cantrip here. Right, so we get to ping our opponent for a bunch. So the 4/4 breakpoint is really important in a matchup like this because of Lightning Bolt. Now, they're going to want to point their Lightning Bolt at the Bowmasters anyway. There's no point dazing this. They have a Wasteland that can pay. But we still have the 4/4 here, which is a pretty reasonable clock. So I don't really think this Daze is doing much work, so I'm happy to Brainstorm and try and put something back. Okay, well, I obviously don't want this Atraxa right now, so that can go. I think the Daze is probably... I guess we're drawing whatever we put back here, and then we have to ponder next turn. So we have a choice to make in regards to what we want to keep in hand to pitch. So I don't really want to pitch the Atraxa. I don't want our opponent to know that we're doing that. So this is definitely going on top and going to get shuffled away next turn. I would like to ponder next turn more than anything else. So I think we hide the ponder on top, and then we have other blue cards that we can pitch to Force of Will. And if we have to fight, we can technically Daze and Force of Will, but our opponent is unlikely to use his Wasteland for anything, so it's just going to be there to pay for Dazes, which is quite often how they tend to be in matchups like this. So I'm quite happy to pitch the Daze here. Alright, so this is a Force of Will pitching the Daze, I believe. So I did mention before that they were working towards a Murktide Regent as a threat. We can play around our opponent's Daze. They didn't have it. 3 cards left in their hand. So it's our time to ponder. We can shuffle away this Atraxa. I like having another land here. I don't mind the Brazen Borrower either. I think the plan here is to put the Borrower on top so that we can draw the Borrower next turn if we want to. Otherwise, we just have Murktide Regent. So I think if our opponent doesn't do anything here, then we probably just draw the Brazen Borrower because it's a nice catch-all answer to some of the things our opponent can have. A Corey Steelcutter. This game is not about Corey Steelcutter anymore. We're on 17 life. We don't care about them making a few 1/1s. They're already a bit low on resources. Sure. Now, this can obviously spiral out of hand a little bit. It shouldn't be a problem for our Murktide to handle. We can always bounce tokens. So we'll draw the Borrower, because that can be useful later on. It's just a nice catch-all to make sure that our Murktide connects. We'll go and get an Underground Sea. It's our turn to deploy a Big Daddy Murktide. So Ponder, Force of Will, Brainstorm, Force of Will, Ponder. We want the biggest one possible so that if they play a Murktide, at the very least we can trade into it. So this can attack in and probably force a block. The Monk's going under the bus. So the utility we got out of this Orcish Bowmaster means that we're putting our opponent in a pretty horrible position here. A Ponder, sure. So our opponent's looking for something like a Brazen Borrower, which can bounce our Murktide, but then we just keep sending the Orc army in anyway. And then we have a Borrower that can clean some stuff up. I'm expecting this Wasteland is going to be used, but if they've got like other spells they can play... Alright, they're just scooping it up. Excellent. So our opponent doesn't know we're a Reanimator deck, which is why I think this build of Reanimator might secretly be better than it used to be. Because when you played a Troll of Khazad-dûm, you immediately set the parameters of what the game was about, Now we don't do that. We just have this plan that just comes out of nowhere and our opponent loses to it. And because they haven't seen any of this, I'm very, very much incentivized to keep this. Force of Will is not really a thing we want here. I would like some Fatal Push, Go for the Throats. Bunch of removal sounds pretty good. I don't... Like, the Dazes are fine here. So the one thing about the, like, Go for the Throats and stuff like that is they can kill Murktide, but the Fatal Push can't. Now, Force of Will always answer a Murktide, or at least attempt to answer a Murktide on the stack, but we can draw into these. So I think that's just better to have. Now, we could just get rid of some Daze and just have more things that are just big and chunky and sort of dominate the board. I also like the Engine Explosives because they're making a bunch of tokens. That probably gives us room for 2 Barrowgoyfs. I think that's probably okay. I like the Thoughtseize. Nice 1-for-1 trade piece is where I want to be. We'll try it like this. Actually, no, we can take out a Wasteland and get another Barrowgoyf in. Barrowgoyf, pretty good against red removal decks, as it turns out. So, what does this hand do? We get to Entomb a giant monster and try and win the game with it. Okay. Potential for a turn to Atraxa, which will win the game. And if that doesn't work, then we can try and beat them with a Barrowgoyf. Alright, so our opponent's going to fight over this Entomb. We could just get an Archon of Cruelty as a piece of removal, because they might just be able to bounce the Atraxa out of play. And they're going to have a difficult time dealing with an Archon of Cruelty anyway. Right, so if they play a Corrie Steelcutter here, we Entomb a response. At least if they try and counterspell our Entomb, then they're not going to get their second spell for the Corrie Steelcutter. Okay, let's just get the Archon of Cruelty in the graveyard. They didn't interact with that at all, which is quite interesting. Are we just going to have it off here? I think you do want to interact with the Entomb, but maybe their plan is to get the extra tokens and shut off Reanimate by dealing us damage. So we'll see. Didn't even attempt to Daze, which is interesting. Right, let's see if I can just bring back the Archon, because they probably boarded out their Force of Wills and stuff because they're really bad in this matchup. Alright, so we just get an Archon of Cruelty now, and that's pretty much going to be the game, I would imagine. This deck feels pretty good. Our opponent not knowing what we are just meant that they're going to board out their Force of Wills because it's a fair tempo matchup, and you don't want this horrible 2-for-1. And now it's like, oh, okay, how are they going to deal with this? They need a Borrower right now. So they need to ponder into land and Borrower here. They do actually have Delirium, so they could hit this with Unholy Heat. They have the Borrower, so that's pretty good for them. So this is what I mean about the Atraxa. Just clearing something off the board is like an interesting proposition. Maybe we still should have gone for the Atraxa. Also, no, we didn't draw it. We drew the Atraxa after we Entombed, didn't we? But here's the problem our opponent faces. I'm going to go and get an island, I think, here. Now, the problem our opponent faces is we can now just play a big, massive Barrowgoyf, which is also better than the things our opponent's doing. And then we have a surprise Engineered Explosives as well. Another Borrower. A Preordain. Sure. This is going to pump the Monk, and then the next spell will get them another Monk. They put both of those cards on the bottom when they scryed, which suggests to me they didn't have the answer they were looking for. Right, you can Wasteland. That's fine. Probably not attacking here. Thoughtseize is interesting, but I don't know if we need that necessarily. So we could put Explosives on 2, or sorry, on 0, and then crack it for 2 mana to take out both of these. They have to lose a real thing to their chump block here. Or we can put it on 1 and then try and blow some stuff up next turn. I think I just like it on 0 here. What a card. Do love an Engineer Explosives. So we'll take out the tokens. This will force them into blocking with one of these guys. If their last card in hand is Brainstorm, they can block with a Tamiyo and flip it. Which is a little bit of a punish from where we are. But again, we can borrow this if we need to. Our opponent is very far behind on cards. Now, 2 of our cards are blank. And arguably, the Entomb is kind of blank now as well. So we do have a lot of blanks in our hand. But a single Brainstorm, and then all of a sudden, this game is virtually unlosable. So we're not going to gain 6 life here, but our life total's healthy. We don't need the life gain right now. They can't get back anything that answers our Barrowgoyf either, because 6/7 Unholy Heat is the thing that can't answer it that they play. They also have the Brazen Borrower. I don't know how many of those they have access to. Delver not flipping, so they've drawn a land or like an artifact or something. It's not an instant or sorcery. Could be a creature. Sure, you can plus this. That's fine. A Murktide Regent. Sure. So they use this to shrink our Barrowgoyf as well. But we're going to bounce this Murktide Regent out of play. Our opponent has no cards in hand. So we're going to bounce this in the draw step. Sorry, in the upkeep before they draw the card from the bauble in case they draw something like a Pyroblast. So we just petty theft this away. The opponent has no real recourse. Good attacks. I guess we are attacking the Tamiyo here. Sure, under the bus, the monk goes. So this Wasteland is an interesting proposition. I will use it because it means our opponent's going to struggle to double spell as easily. So what types do we have? There's creature, artifact, instant. There's no sorceries. So I can Thoughtseize to grow my Barrowgoyf. So it's enough to kill a Tamiyo. We're doing another little Barrowgoyf. So this is a 3/3. But it shrinks our guy. But if they crack this bauble, we're going to... Actually, it's not going to impact it because we have the engine explosives. Yeah, sure. This one could slip away from us. So using the explosives the way we did might cost us this game. We could have just had that as an answer to Tamiyo. There is a Tamiyo of our very own. So there's no creatures in the graveyard. Let's attack. There's no creatures, there's no sorceries. So let's try and use this as a combat trick. And double block here. Sure. And I'll cast an Entomb. So we can put a creature in the graveyard that we can try and reanimate in a bit. I think that makes the most amount of sense. That's probably just another Barrowgoyf, isn't it? That's going to grow our power by 1. It's either that or put a sorcery in, but there's more use to having... so we get to kill both of these and gain some life. Then I'll deploy my own Tamiyo. We do need to be able to destroy this Tamiyo. That is a problem if they draw a bunch of cards. Now, it's not impossible we can still win through them having lots of cards because they're going to be gated by the amount of spells they can cast. But I'd rather they didn't just draw all the cards in the world. Right, so they're showing us a Daze. So we know they have a Daze in hand, which is kind of relevant on this board, weirdly. Lightning Bolting the Tamiyo. It's going to get them a friend. So they're probably going to attack for 3 and then chump block with the monk as their plan. So any removal for this monk is good. We have Shoulder's Edict, which can just... Actually, no, Shoulder's Edict doesn't work here because we've seen the Daze already. A Ponder. Okay, let's Ponder. A Barrowgoyf, a Ponder, a Wasteland. So we could try and Wasteland our opponent so that they're not able to capitalise on all these extra cards they're going to get. So what would we have to draw here? I don't think there's anything we draw here that actually matters. I think we're just going to have to let our opponent draw 1,000,000 cards. Which kind of sucks for us. So this is going to activate. So I think we're just... Are we attacking them? Because that's what this game is about now. Because we know we can't kill this. Because they're always going to block it. So we'll attack them this time. I wonder if we got the Atraxa on 1 instead of the Archon, it would have been better for us. I think the real play that cost us this game was the engine explosives. Our opponent had 1 card in hand, and I banked on it not being Brainstorm, but maybe that shouldn't have been the case. I think I'm going to Thoughtseize here as well. Because they're going to have Dazes in hand. So we're going to take out what we can. So our opponent's going to draw a lot of cards this turn. But how many answers they realistically have to Barrowgoyf in their deck? That is another question. If we draw a blue source, we can Murktide, but we're drawing the Ponder next turn, so that's our plan. Right, Corey Steelcutter, and they're going to play a thing. So these things are a way that they can actually leverage the amount of cards they have to actually do something pretty gross. So I think we are falling behind here. Yeah, I think that Engineering Explosives play was not the one, as it turned out. But this is, like, you could say to yourself, oh yeah, but, you know, it was unlucky they had the 1 Brainstorm in hand. But at the same point, I could have played in a way that wouldn't have mattered. So it is on me. Alright, let's cast a Ponder. Barrowgoyf, Undercity Sewers, Underground Sea. I guess we just play this Murktide. Well, we can't play the Murktide actually, can we? We're playing into a Daze as well. 6/7 pretty large. Let's fire this off. We don't want to put anything on the stack for now. We want to give our opponent 3 ways of pumping their guys. Sure, under the bus they go. So they kind of just have this infinite amount of creatures they can put under the bus. So our opponent is probably going to Wasteland us this time. But they might not. They might just try and pump out a bunch of spells. So they're probably going to try and cast a Corey Steelcutter and something else. Like, it is weirdly possible for us to win this game, even though our opponent has 16 cards in hand. Sorry, 19 cards in hand. 16 cards in deck. Sure. There you go, Dragon's Rage Channeler. And another one. Just going to activate the Steel Cutters. So getting in for a pretty good amount of damage right now. Nope, just coming in for 3. So they're just going to put loads of bodies underneath the Barrowgoyf. So I don't believe this Barrowgoyf is going to resolve, because we've already seen a Daze as well. Yep, so we get to kill all of these guys. And we gain a bunch of life. We play this, it gets countered. We play the Brazen Borrower. That seems reasonable, because if that gets countered, we don't mind as much. And we can play the Barrowgoyf. And then again, we just have this big lifelinking body that our opponent has to throw loads and loads of things under the bus with. Alright, let's cast this Borrower. Okay, they didn't care enough about the Borrower to interact with it. So this can trade off the Channeler. We can start running our opponent out of... Well, it's very hard to run our opponent out of threats when they have Corey Steelcutter. But if our opponent has to keep cantripping, then they only have like 7 or so turns left before they deck. This is a weird game. I'm excited to see it play out. It's probably right to scoop here, but I think it's an interesting dynamic what's happening. So I would like to see when this ends up. In theory, our opponent should be using more of the clock than we are, so we should be able to claw back the time differential here. So we have to make a choice about what we're doing here. I think I'm just going to trade with the Delver. So the other option is to attack, but it's not going to be great to attack into this Channeler, so I think it's better just to clear something off the board, keep things going. This Barrowgoyf's not going to resolve. Is it worth playing out the Murktide Regent? How many things do we have? 1, 2... Alright, so we're going to play a Murktide Regent around a Daze here. So we get rid of an Entomb, Ponder, another Entomb. I guess Thoughtseize, we just make it as big as we can. I assume it's getting Pyroblasted. So don't deal with this. We do get to gobble up one of their Channelers. What can they buy back with the Tamiyo? Nothing too exciting. Like Force of Wills and Bolts are pretty useful. Alright, there is the Pyroblast. We knew that was coming. So this Barrowgoyf's probably not going to get it done here. I mean, how much damage are you taking? 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15. Alright, we'll let our opponent grind a little bit of their clock down so we're closer to even, and then we'll scoop this one up. We're not winning from this position. So I think this entire game came down to the Engineer Explosives play. We tried to get a bit more aggressive than we needed to, because I thought we were doing really well. I didn't think about how the game could have spiraled out of control for us. Just classic Tamiyo things. What we need here is Brain Freeze. Just take them out. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So they will kill us pretty sharpish. But we're just going to let their clock go down a little bit so that we've got a bit more breathing room to think in game 3. Right, you can pull your triggers on. I just get all this wonderful F6 value. This will be lethal this turn. Yeah, this game entirely came down to that one play of ours. If I'd have had a third mana that turn, I would have probably just played the Explosives for 1, but I wanted to get the tempo going when I really should have thought about the longer game. Right, they didn't actually need to Lightning Bolt us here, do they? But they want to swing for as much as possible, and I don't mind getting a couple of minutes ahead of our opponent on clock. Okay, so now our opponent knows we're doing graveyard stuff. They're probably going to board in Force of Wills. Do I like what I've done here? Do I want some Dauthi Voidwalkers? I don't really like Dauthi Voidwalker into the red matchup because it's just too easy for them to kill. I think we're just going to send it again as is. Like, we had that game, we just made a bad choice that we got heavily punished for. But we could have played in a way that we didn't lose to our opponent's last card being Brainstorm. We should have taken that option. We've got a Brainstorm to move some cards around. And a Fatal Push. I think this is okay. Like, we don't have to worry about our Brainstorm getting Thoughtseize or anything. So what am I going to do here? Probably start with the ability to get a Surveil land. We have a lot of lands, so we can try and bait our opponent's Wastelands out. Try and make them think the game's about that when it's not. It's not like the old Rug Delver mirrors many, many years back, where a lot of it was about trying to strip your opponent's green sources and make sure they're gone. so that you can stick your Goyfs and they couldn't. And also your Mongoose. But that was a different time. Alright, I'm not going to... I can play around Daze here, so I'm going to. So get Undercity Sewers. Get Surveil going. And Entomb. Interesting. I will keep the Entomb. Make our opponent have to respect that. They've seen the Entomb as well, so they know we're keeping it. Right, I'm going to Wasteland this Volcanic, so they can't Daze or anything here, and just get a nice Fatal Push Off on their guy. Push off Dragon's Rage Channeler. Okay, so now we're just sort of restarting the game, but we have a land in play. If we want to make our opponent fight over stuff and use counter spells, that's exactly what the Entomb has the ability to do. I don't want to fire this off on our turn. We can fire off on our opponent's turn to make them have to use a Force of Will rather than a Force of Negation, which means that the Force of Will can't be pointed at our Barrowgoyfs and stuff later on. Now, they might not have Force of Negation, but it's free for us to play around this way. And also our opponent has to fear potential Bowmaster. Right, let's Entomb. See what fight our opponent has in them. We're going to get the Atraxa here. We're not going to go and fetch anything. We don't have any more Surveil lands. Right, let's Brainstorm. Big fan of the Thoughtseize here. Real big fan of the Thoughtseize. I don't particularly want these two lands though. Don't want the Wasteland. I don't really want the Wasteland actually. So we'll put both of those back. And then I guess we'll fetch and then Thoughtseize. I will play my land as well, just to make sure that we can play around a potential Daze here. And hold up blue mana to make them think about it. So we've got a 5/6 that we can drop soon. Alright, Force of Will, Murktide Regent, Ponder, Daze. Okay, I don't mind our opponents spinning their resources for Force of Wills. So it's I don't think we have an answer for the Murktide Regent, so I'm just going to take the Murktide Regent for now. And just be happy in the knowledge that we don't have to worry about that. It's interesting they didn't fight over the Entomb, they wanted to fight over our reanimation spells. I find that an interesting line. Because without the Entomb, we blank a bunch of cards on our deck. A Reanimate. So we know that this will force our opponent's hand with a Force. And I'm okay doing that. I get to pay 1 mana and our opponent gets to discard 2 cards. Like, why wouldn't I do that? So this is going to be Force of Will, pitching Daze probably. Force of Will, pitching Daze. Sure. So now that we know there isn't a Daze, there is still that Force of Will. Do I want to play around a second Daze? Do I want to play... Well, I could play this Barrowgoyf. If they don't have a Daze or a blue card, we're laughing. But if they do, then we lose the Barrowgoyf, and then they already have our Murktide covered. Curious. I think I'm just going to pass and leave this in hand in case we want to brainstorm some cards back next turn. Like, at the very least, I would like them to use the Force of Will on our Barrowgoyf. Right. 1, 2, 3. So is this Force of Will bait for you? It's not really bait, it's something they have to Force of Will. So they did have a Tamiyo. So we get a nice 2 for 1 there. This also means that Reanimates can pick up Barrowgoyf if our life total gets low and we don't want to risk getting an Atraxa in case they have burn spells. But now we just get to jam this Barrowgoyf and we know they've got this Pyroblast, so we're just going to not play blue spells into it. Ooh, a Thoughtseize. Yes, please. What have you got? Show me your wares. 2 Pyroblasts. Okay, that is not a hand that is going to help them out very much here. So that Thoughtseize could have paved the way for a Murktide if they only had the 1 Pyroblast. But now we are in a pretty good spot. I'm surprised they're not getting a Surveil land, especially when they have another fetch. I guess they're keeping this fetch for Brainstorm purposes because they're just going to bin off these cards because they're bad. So I don't believe they have Pyroblast or Flooded Strand here. They need to answer the problem that is in front of them. And I think that means probably putting back Pyroblast unless they, you know, drew some other cards that weren't as useful anyway. So what are they going to see that we've drawn? A Polluted Delta. Right, let's bash with the Barrowgoyf. If this connects, we can just get a nice creature. Hopefully. Alright, we've connected. That is terrible news for our opponent. I'll get back a Tamiyo. And I will deploy the Tamiyo. If they Pyroblast this, I will play a Murktide. They did still have the Pyroblast. Excellent. Do I play this one out? I don't think I do. Blue, blue. So what have they got? They've got lots of Ponders and Force of Will. So they've got loads of stuff in there. So we'll take out a Thoughtseize, another Thoughtseizes, and another Thoughtseize. One of these reanimates. Brainstorm, sure, just make a big guy. Alright, they have a Force of Will. But now our opponent is hellbent, staring down a Barrowgoyf. This is how the game usually plays out. Alright, we got the match. So we did make a misstep in game 2. And I did already talk about that and how, yes, you could say we were unlucky they had the Brainstorm in hand, but that's a relatively common play pattern of blocking with your Tamiyo and flipping it, and we should have played towards the thing that could have beaten us. And we didn't. But we won the match anyway, because we played a bit smarter in game 3. Okay, on to round 2. This hand is already a mulligan, and is a little bit sketchy with this land. I think I'm just going to try and mulligan into something a little bit more stable. Okay, this is just a perfectly serviceable hand. We can keep this. What do we got? We probably aren't looking at doing Murktide things in the near future, so that's a thing for later. If we Force of Will, we can pitch our Brazen Borrower. It's not ideal, but it's probably going to be more ideal than letting whatever we need to Force of Will resolve. I'm not going to keep the Murktide just to have a bad card to Force of Will with, when we could have a card that is going to be more immediately impactful. They kept off their Ponder. This start could be one of like 100 decks pretty much, so we can't really draw too much into that. I think we go and get our basic island with the only land that we have that can get basic island. And I will fire off this Ponder. We don't 100% know what we're looking for, but because we're a combo deck, we can always work towards some things. Okay, so we'll put the Archon of Cruelty away. I like the Thoughtseize. Alright, I'll take the Thoughtseize. So next time we will draw the Reanimate, which isn't ideal, but it means that any future Entombs we draw are pretty handy. Alright, so we could be looking at the Grixis tempo deck, which I think is the best tempo deck right now. It could also be Grixis Control. Orcish Bowmasters. That is not the problem we care about right now. Our plan is still Thoughtseize, and then we can Bowmasters whilst we've taken away whatever's going to answer our Bowmasters. Get Swamp. Get Thoughtseize going. Force of Will, Ponder with 2 Wastelands. I'm going to take the Ponder. They will Force of Will our Bowmasters, then we will reanimate the Bowmasters, and then we are ahead. So they're going to bash us for 2 here. This is fine, our life total can take it. Like, it makes our reanimates worse if we lose life points. But if we're reanimating a Bowmasters anyway, it shouldn't matter that much. A Nethergoyf. How do I feel about Nethergoyf? Like, it's kind of annoying. I don't really want to fight with a Force over this, though. I think that's fine. It's only a 1-2 for now. Obviously, it gets bigger. Especially when they've got a Wasteland kicking around over there and we're about to put a creature in their graveyard. Okay. We know our opponent's exact hand. We can just Entomb, Reanimate, and Atraxa and win the game. That seems pretty good. And we can back up with Force of Will. Oh, this deck is pretty gross, isn't it? Let's just get this Underground Sea. Let's cast an Entomb. Which is a little bit better than reanimating the Bowmasters they counterspell. I'll get an Atraxa, please. I'll reanimate the Atraxa. Now, our life total is a resource that we're leaning into pretty heavily here. It's interesting that they let the Entomb resolve. So we can Wasteland our thing. Okay, what do we have here? So, a Murktide Regent is our creature. We'll take a Polluted Delta. It's the best land in our deck. Do I want to Ponder? We kind of need to get rid of some of the things our opponent's putting down, but I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. We could just Entomb, Reanimate, and just have that going as our next sort of wave of things. I don't hate that, to be honest. Well, like, we're going to need to get some life off this Atraxa, so maybe we need to... I think I want the Reanimate, and I will take the Entomb. I could definitely see taking the blue cards there instead. Alright, our opponent has to remove this right now. Otherwise, the game gets pretty hard for them to win. Not finding a Force of Will is a shame, but I'll take it. Okay, a Thoughtseize. Be my guest. So you can take the Bowmasters, we can reanimate it. They might just be Thoughtseizing to get information and then scooping. See what our last card that they didn't know was. But this is a pretty horrible situation for our opponent. We know the last card in their hand. So we're going to get to connect once with Atraxa. All right, they're scooping it up. Yeah, so we had this like nice little tempo game plan that probably wins us the game anyway. We Bowmasters this. So we Bowmasters, they force it, then we reanimate, kill this. And then we've got Bowmasters to their Nethergoyf. And then we've also got other cards in hand. That's a reasonable position to be in. But then we just top deck an Entomb, and then all of a sudden, we just absolutely win the game on the spot. All right, so Fatal Pushes, Shoulder's Edict, stuff like that. They showed us red mana, which means they're Grixis tempo, which means we don't really have to care about countering their spells that much. We can just play a nice fair game here. I don't hate the Ghost Vacuum, just to keep their stuff in check. I don't mind the explosives either. Like all of this stuff is viable. It depends how far in on the combo we want to be. Let's take out these Dazes. Just keep sending big stuff until they die. That's how I like to play this. So they have red, which means they have Pyroblasts, which makes a lot of our blue spells significantly worse. Like, obviously, 1 mana blue spells, trading for 1 mana blue spell is fine, and I have no issue with that. But then it's some of the other bits and pieces. So we could board something that looks like this. Do I want the Dauthi Voidwalkers and the Ghost Vacuum? I don't think so. I think we just keep what we're doing here. Now, there's definitely lots of approaches to how you can sideboard with this deck. And I think the thing is however you sideboard, you need to play towards the way you've sideboarded. So we're going to answer stuff on the board, and we're just going to send some stuff that our opponent has to respect. So we're trying to make our opponent have to 2-for-1 themselves a bunch to keep our stuff down, and then we could pull ahead afterwards. One thing I am a little bit worried about is the Kaito. That is quite a scary beast, but hopefully we can put some stuff in front of it so they never get to ninjutsu it in. And then by the time it comes down, we can hopefully go to the top. This opener is not a keeper. Island Ponder. Sure, I don't really like the Wasteland very much, but I'll live with it. Probably put back... Kind of tempted to put back a Brainstorm and make them fight over the Tamiyo twice. Or we could go for putting back the Ponder so we have 2 ways of flipping our Tamiyo. I'm going to put back a Brainstorm here. I think I'll lead off on Tamiyo, force our opponent to interact. So our opponent's had to mulligan to 5 cards because we're a scary deck that can make a turn to Atraxa. And then we're just going to play a fair tempo game. And then if they have to 2-for-1 themselves at any point, it's going to be lights out. Now, if there's some sort of Grixis Reanimator deck and I just read them wrong, and that's why they let the Entomb resolve before, then sure, hands up, they're going to get me. But I haven't really seen those sorts of decks with Nethergoyf as well. I don't think you can fit all of that in a deck and still be a Reanimator deck, because you need this 11-card package to be a Reanimator deck. Which is ridiculous. It shouldn't be 11 cards to be a Reanimator deck. That doesn't seem right to me. Okay, so dueling Tamiyos it is. Brazen Borrower. I am going to get an island. Yes, we have black spells on our deck. We don't have them in hand right now. We can ponder into them in the lands. We just want to get our Tamiyo down. So a Daze here would be pretty good. They did not have a Daze. So whose Tamiyo gets to flip first? Like, they could have just kept a hand that was make a turn to Planeswalker, and that is a perfectly viable hand to keep. Right, they're cracking the fetch. This could mean some sort of removal spell, like Molten Collapse on our guy. No, not Molten Collapse, because they didn't have the mana for that. Okay, they're just going to be Thoughtseizing us. Okay, so they're going to take probably the Brainstorm here. That would be my guess. They did, in fact, take the Brainstorm. So yeah, Shoulder's Edict is another sort of spell they could have had here. Are they going to try and flip their guy? We will always block here. Obviously, we're not fearful of Kaito right now. Just showing them that we are going to be doing some blocking. Okay, so they didn't Brainstorm there. That is interesting. Right, I guess it's our turn to Tamiyo attack. Let's get Ponder going. We definitely don't want the Archon of Cruelty. And we don't have another way of shuffling. This is in any order in shuffle, I think. And Entomb. That is a shuffle effect. So play this one out. And we can try and bait something out of our opponent with this Entomb. I don't believe our opponent is playing ways of interacting with our graveyard in terms of bringing stuff back. They're probably going to have like Grafdigger's Cage or Ghosty Vacuum, that sort of thing. A Brainstorm, you say? How do I feel about Brainstorm? I'm going to cast an Entomb in response. This gives us the possibility of drawing an answer immediately for their Tamiyo, because we can put the Archon of Cruelty in the graveyard and it says sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. So I think again the Archon makes the most sense here. We do have a Brazen Borrower which can answer Tamiyo. Force of Will pitching another Tamiyo. So they're brainstorming with no cards. So we've made their brainstorm worse. That's fine. We can bounce this Tamiyo out if we need to. Yep, Tamiyo flips. They have one card in hand. I wonder what it is. It's a Wasteland. Okay, so we're going to lose our Underground Sea. Sure. But we have the answer to the Tamiyo right now in the Borrower. Another Entomb. Okay, hopefully we can leverage that at some point. Let's attack with the Tamiyo with our -1 power creature. I don't really want them getting cards back here. I think I'm just going to pay Theft this now. So they're going to have to work harder to get a Planeswalker. And hopefully they're going to be spending their mana on just like making their little guy, and then we can start leveraging our clue tokens. An Orcish Bowmasters, pretty good. That's going to pipe down our ability to use the clue tokens. Animate Dead. I would like to Animate Dead, wouldn't I? The correct play here is to crack a clue and actually try and find the black source. Yes, they get an Orc Army ping here. Alright, we found the black source though, so it was entirely worth it. Our opponent has one card in hand. It's Tamiyo. What is my plan here? Am I entombing now to play around a potential Daze? I think I am. Let's go and get the Atraxa. Don't want to see a Wasteland here. They might crack a clue looking for a Wasteland. They are through their Brainstorm cards now, I think. But yes, we currently have Animate Dead around a Daze. Now, if they've just drawn a Force of Will, then that obviously sucks for us. But if they play out the Tamiyo, they're playing out the Tamiyo, so no Force of Will here. So Surgical Extraction is the card that I don't want them to have. I don't think there's any need to play this out. I will play it out, actually. Let's get the Atraxa. What is your one card in hand? It was not a Surgical Extraction. Alright, so now we have a giant monster in play that draws us a bunch of cards and they scoop it up. I've said this for quite some time, that I think Blue-Black Reanimator is the best tempo build you can play in Legacy. And until Entomb gets banned, I think that will always be the case. And I think we're showing it today. We are smashing through these other tempo decks quite nicely. Alright, let's go to round 3. We're not keeping this one, so we're going to mulligan. Okay. I'll keep this one. I think we'll put back an Underground Sea here. We have 2 mana sources. The Wasteland is really nice if our opponent's doing some sort of as a Saga type jam that we have to respect. Play this one out so we can't get Wasteland in the first turn cycle. Cloud Post. Wow. I seem to have this Wasteland in my hand. That's good news, isn't it? Alright, I'm not going to crack this for anything just yet. We're just going to Wasteland our opponent here. Now that we have another fetch land, I am going to Entomb in our opponent's end step. And I'll get an Atraxa, I believe. That's the thing that digs for Wastelands the best. So we don't need to worry about our opponent interacting with our lands here. So we're just going to do this. Since Sowing Microspawn has gone away, they're not really running Wastelands anymore. Okay, we did not draw the thing I wanted to, but let's cast a Brainstorm. See if we can draw a Reanimate here. Not a Reanimate, but I do like these cards. I will put back 2 lands, and I will deploy a fetch land with the intention of getting a Surveil land. A Manifold Key, sure. They did not have another land there. Interesting. Right, go Gadget, Undercity Sewers. Hope our younger viewers are aware of what Inspector Gadget is. Anyway, are we brainstorming here? I think we're just going to Wasteland first. Alright, we can brainstorm into exactly Reanimate here. We did not brainstorm into exactly Reanimate. I don't really want to draw this other Entomb. And I'll put this land on top. So that we have double Force of Will available. And then next time we play the land and we can crack it, shuffle, and then brainstorm off of a fresh deck. Let's crack this. Go and get ourselves Undercity Sewers. Cast a Brainstorm. There is the Reanimate, and we have a Thoughtseize to boot. I guess we put back Force of Will, because we're going to get that off the top in a second anyway. And a Daze. Alright, I will Thoughtseize my opponent first, as is good practice. Our opponent could have some weird, like, Daisy type stuff. So they're probably just, like, colourless bunch of stuff. So what am I most scared about is our opponent having a bunch of mana when we got all this counter magic. So I'm just going to take the Monolith here. And then we're just going to get back our massive creature. Okay, I would like this Force of Will. I'd like this power to be bigger, please. Okay, our opponent's just skipping to that because they know we're going to have Force of Will and stuff. We got a good clock. Alright, so they are colourless. I would like Engine Explosives, please. I want the Force of Negation and the Consign to Memories. This is actually a nice matchup where we get to have our counter magic instead of just like stomping around. I like the removal spells. So I like Shoulder's Edict specifically because it kills Planeswalkers. Now, our opponent is probably going to have Glaring Fleshraker in their deck. I don't think Daze is actually going to counter many of our opponent's spells. It's going to be very easy for our opponent to play around as well. I don't really think this is a Tamiyo matchup either. Tamiyo's kind of slow for what it's doing. And that gives us access to another removal spell if we want to kill a destroy target non-artifact creature. Maybe that's not the one we want here. Maybe we want just like a Fatal Push. We could just board into like the Fair Tempo plan. Let's have a look and see what that looks like. So if we get rid of these Reanimates, because we can just apply pressure and just have like some good stuff. So if we, let's say we brought in the Dauthis and the Barrowgoyfs, that still leaves us wanting for some more cards. How do we go about adding more cards to this little pile? Maybe another Fatal Push for the Glaring Fleshraker. Maybe this. It does kill Fleshraker. And maybe we run a couple of Days. They're blue cards. They also pitch. They pitch to Force of Will whilst also sometimes countering things. What is our blue count looking like is another question here. 22. I'd rather have a couple more blue cards if possible. What do we get rid of here? If we want another blue card. Maybe we just have one more Daze in. So it stops our opponent having really, really good starts. And I'm imagining our opponent has Leyline of the Void in their sideboard. So what does this hand do? We don't really do anything on turn 1. The Daze kind of sets us back. I think we do better. Okay, I like Engine Explosives to clean up a bunch of keys and stuff. The Dauthi Voidwalker makes our discard look very, very amusing. I will get rid of Polluted Delta, or that's probably still nothing around to see, isn't it? The one consideration there is if they have Karn's Silex or not. There is a Cloud Post. Right, big fan of drawing that Force of Will. A Glimmer Post. Sure, 3 mana available here. This could be a Karn's Silex. A Trinisphere. Right, step 1. We go and get ourselves a Surveil land. I believe we are having to force this. Murktide Regent. That's kind of not a thing we want for now, but if we work towards this, that's not a bad place to work towards. I think it has to go into the graveyard here. Okay, so let's get rid of this because we're not really beating a Trinisphere. It's just going to take too long to do anything. Okay, so we can play around Karn's Silex with this or save this for a Brainstorm. I think I'm going to save it for Brainstorm. Let's just go and get ourselves a Dauthi Voidwalker. Now we got some 4 mana coming our way. Is this going to be Big Daddy Karn or is it the One Ring? I don't know which of those scares me more. Kozilek's Command. Okay, so they're playing like almost a semi-control-y game here. They're using this to draw rather than gain extra mana. Just keeping our board clean. So this Cloud Post deck's kind of eat us up, I guess. Maybe we're supposed to just try and send the Reanimate plan here. Maybe I've just made a mistake. Okay, I guess we're just passing here. We don't have anything to do with our fetch lands. Yeah, I think we want to be on the Send It Reanimate plan. Like, the tempo plan looks good when you've got Wastelands, but when we don't have Wastelands, we just need to pressure our opponent. The One Ring. Alright, our opponent's going to run away with this one quite quickly. We don't have any of the sort of like big haymakers that you can have, like your Null Rods or even Void Mirror, stuff like that. Void Mirror just completely shuts them down here. Alright, they have a Manifold Key. They're going to draw some extra cards? I think so. And another Trinisphere? Sure, be my guest opponent. We're already in the dirt a little bit, so why not be in the dirt some more? I just think I'm going to screw this one up. I don't think that works for us. Okay, I think we want to just go back on sending the Reanimate plan. So, Entomb, Atraxa, Archon, and these Reanimates. Oh, we actually had the Animate Dead still in as well. Whoops. Okay, so what do we want here? I don't hate the Dauthi Voidwalker plan, being able to bop away one of our opponent's things with a Thoughtseize and just get something really sweet. We obviously want the Force of Negations. Is it the Barrowgoyfs that go? They are like kind of chonky, but I think we need to reanimate stuff more. 3 mana is actually kind of a lot for the matchup. Obviously we want the Thoughtseizes, we want the Ponders. I think I'm right with the Tamiyos being too slow. I guess we end up boarding out some of our removal spells. Maybe the Ponder is too slow. I think our blue count is okay here though. 19. 20 including Atraxa. That isn't really enough, is it? Okay, so maybe we don't get to do the Dauthi Voidwalker thing. And then we bring back some of our Ponders. And that gives us 22 blue cards. That's okay. Maybe we take out the... I like the Shoulder's Edict because it answers things, though. Maybe it's the Explosives goes. We just get another Ponder in, just up our blue count. Let's try this. Like, we just want to send a big monster on turn 2. Or Wasteland our opponent a bunch. Those are the 2 ways to win this game. Okay. This is the thing I want to do. Let's do that. So, Archon of Cruelty clocks our opponent quicker. Atraxa finds us Wastelands and other things that we get to do. This hand does seem fine to me. I don't think we take a turn off the Thoughtseize. Because on turn 2, when we reanimate, we can dig deep enough to find another black source and then cast the Thoughtseize on 2. I think that's acceptable. And I don't think they're going to do anything so bad that we can't get through it with a force of will here. Ancient Tomb. No play. Alright, let's Entomb. I think it's the Atraxa here. Atraxa quite often gives you another way of doing it as well. Let's get the Atraxa back. We can Force of Will to protect this if we need to. 2 colourless mana. Warping Whale. Get out of here. Okay, so... I kind of want the black source more than I want the Wasteland here. I guess we take the Daze. This isn't a very good pile, to be honest. The Reanimate, and I think we have to take the black source here. And obviously we take Animate Dead because it's kind of a freebie. Okay, I think it is correct to Thoughtseize rather than hold up Consign to Memory. Manifold Key, Trinisphere, Ugin. I will take the Trinisphere. So this is the one that blows up coloured permanents, but it's very expensive. There is a Cloud Post. We will attack. I will go and find a Surveil land in case we bin over the Archon of Cruelty exactly. Not the Archon of Cruelty. I do like the Brainstorm quite a lot here though, so I will keep the Brainstorm. And then we pass. We can either Consign to Memory or we can Bowmasters. There is the Vesuva, copying the Cloud Post. There is the Manifold Key, which we don't care about. I'm not expecting this Daze to get much work done. Okay, let's fire in the Bowmasters, ping our opponent. If they have a 2 mana spell, we get to Daze it anyway, so... Okay, I think we cast a Brainstorm here. If we find a Orcish Bowmasters, we just win the game. We found the Orcish Bowmasters, and we have a Force of Will to back it up. Understood. Boom, in comes the Bowmasters. A pretty clean victory. Yeah, I think we just made a mistake trying to play the tempo plan. We should just be sending it. Alright, we are 3-0. This deck is very good. Let's go to round 4. For the best Eternal experience this summer, check out Eternal Mania in Hasselt, Belgium from August 8th to 10th. Aside from hosting the European Legacy Masters, they have a whole host of other tournaments from team trios to old school and pre-modern. I will be there playing Legacy and hanging out as a special guest. This will also be the first event that I'll be giving out my own special Marital Age tokens, so why not come down to enjoy an awesome weekend ran by one of the best TOs in Europe. So this opening hand kind of doesn't do very much. Like, we can make a Murktide. So we go like Thoughtseize. This is 1 card, 2 card, 3 card, 4 card, 5 card. So we can make a turn 3 Murktide, but it's only going to be a 5/5. Is that worth our time? 2 pieces of interaction into a Murktide. I think it's probably the low end of keepable. I'm not excited about it, but we can play on basics if we want to as well. Obviously, that changes our Murktide Regent calculations a little bit because obviously this doesn't cast a Murktide Regent. All right, a Bayou. Are we looking at Cradle Control? Okay. Elvish Reclaimer is in play. Not ideal for us. A Reanimate. I think we're just going to get an Underground Sea. If our opponent wants to spend time wastelanding us, that's kind of annoying, but we've got a lot of lands. And I'd rather have the ability to, like, daze something. Keen-Eyed Curator Collector. Well, I guess we get rid of the the Curator. The one that actually impacts what our deck does. So we can reanimate this Keen-Eyed Curator now, so we actually have a good game plan. But our opponent has a Elvish Reclaimer, so if they just hold up the mana, they can Bojuka Bog. It does get kind of awkward for us. I don't really know what techie lands our opponent has access to either. I guess we can make our opponent waste their turn here. This is also going to build us out for a Murktide Regent. Let's see if we can get this Keen-Eyed Curator. Is it good enough to warrant a Bojuka Bog from our opponent? Probably. But then our graveyard has more stuff in it because this Reanimate's going to go into our graveyard. So our Murktide Regent's going to become more castable. We also have a Surveil. Oh, wow, we just have it. That is a surprise to me. I wonder what our opponent has. Manland, perhaps? Like the lair of the thingamajig. Hydra, I think it is. They're just getting a Dryad Arbor. That's suspicious. A Noble Hierarch. Don't care about that one. Guy's Cradle. That's a pretty good one. I don't have any mystery cards in hand now, though. Okay, I believe we are not getting a Surveil land here. We are just draining our opponent's lands over there, out of their graveyard. I would like to exile this forest. A Tamiyo. We have a 3/3 here. And a bunch of additional mana. I guess we play this. So we have sorcery, and that's it. This can make an endurance, but we know all the cards on our opponent's hand, right? So they can't make an endurance. Have I missed something? Wait, is this the Verdant Catacombs they played, or have I already crossed that one off? I can't remember now. I'll trust past Cyrus that he got it right. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's crack this. I think we can afford to get an island here. Blue, blue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get this in there. I don't think the Daze is going to do anything, so that's going to be our pitch to Force of Will. Just slam a bunch of friends in. Alright, what beastie are they going to get land-wise? So they're going to turn this Dryad Arbor into something else. So this pumps both the White of the Reliquary and the Elvish Reclaimer, which is why I feel kind of just getting whatever land. That's not a reason I want to get. Okay, we have a Surveil land. That is not a big sign of strength, which is good news for us. They pinned off a Cradle. I think our Force of Will should hopefully do enough to get us over the line here. We can curtail our opponent's graveyard so we don't have to worry about their Elvish Reclaimer beating our stuff in combat. An Ignoble Hierarch. That is not the one our opponent wants here. They can attack with a 5/6 though, which we will have to let through. And there is a Collector Roof. We don't have baubles or anything for this to shut off. There is a Dryad Arbor. I think they should send it here, right? Unless they have a really interesting land they want to get. So here it is, Dryad Arbor. Let's attack with the whole team, I think, here. We get a Clue, which we can crack if we wish. If we need to, we can strip some cards out of our graveyard, out of their graveyard, so that the Keen-Eyed Curator doesn't die to an Elvish Reclaimer. If they're just chump blocking, that's fine. What is this? Cord? No, they're just sacrificing their guy into something else. Sure, that's fine. There is the lair of the Hydra that we mentioned before. How big is this? 1, 2, 3, 4 mana. 5 mana, 6 mana, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if this attacks on its own, it hits for 10. If it attacks on its own, this is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we can strip some cards from the graveyard, but we can't. We'd have to spend all of our mana to do that. I think I'm going to... Oh, we can't activate our clue, can we? I think I just play a Tamiyo on blocks. So I'm worried about Natural Order. Although a lot of these decks aren't even running Natural Order anymore, which is wild to me, because that card does just give you an eject button in games where you're behind. But the people who build this deck and innovate on it know what they're doing way better than I do. Am I countering an Elvish Reclaimer? I don't think so. I think we're just having 2 swings with Murktide Regent is our plan. We also now have a creature. We already have creature hunters, don't we, because of this? Okay. I was going to say we also have a creature that we can do stuff with, but that doesn't work in the graveyard because we already have the creature type under there. Lair of the Hydra. It's a moderate-sized creature. Does this have trample? It doesn't have trample. Good. I'm willing to save 8 life here. Just to hoover up this graveyard as best we can. So this gives us Hardcast Force of Will, but I don't think Hardcast Force of Will is actually that good. Attacking for 6 here doesn't matter. I think we just attack with the Murktide for 5. So we have the ability to surveil and see if we can put in like a sorcery or something, and then we can grow this into a 7/7. But we're mostly just going to be blocking with it anyway at this point. So they have a second Surveil land. This doesn't have reach either. They did not have another Surveil land. They're probably going to Reclaimer. I think our Force of Will is going to do enough this game. We've been quite disciplined with it. Talon Gates of Madara might be a thing that can wreck us a little bit. If they phase out our Murktide. Right, another land. It's going to be very hard for us to empty all of these. So they're going to fire up the big old Hydra. They're going to come in with it. This is 9 damages. Okay, first things first, I think we are going to get Surveil land. Get some information. An Entomb. What does Entomb do for us? Nothing really. It can give us a 7/7 Keen-Eye Curator. That might be the line here, actually. Because this has Trample as well, right? They probably don't have 2 Talon Gates of Madara, but they might have Echoing Deeps. Alright. I think we're going to lose this one, actually. Take a big old hit here. Get rid of this. They already know the Reanimate deck, so we're not saving anything by getting rid of the Entomb. I guess they were going to graveyard anyway, wouldn't it? So, alright, let's just keep shredding these as much as we can. 7/7 Trample. Okay. Going to be a weird play, and it could go wrong for us. It depends how many Talon Gates and similar effects they have in their deck. And if they put the Collector Reef under the bus, it at least gives us a chance to crack this clue and maybe find something else. Okay, so this is going to trample 3 damage over. Okay, so it's going to kill all of those guys. Right, let's Entomb. Where is Reanimate? We don't really want to draw Thoughtseize either, actually. So that gives us a sorcery, creature, land, instant. That grows our Murktide. It gives us 2 mana to get rid of these extra lands out of the graveyard as well. So if they crack one of these fetches, then the Keen-Eye Curator is currently lethal. Talon Gates. This phases out the Murktide. And then we gobble up this land. Oh no, wait, sorry, we're not lethal, are we? My maths is really poor there. I shouldn't have even cracked that either. Yeah, we're just dead to the... lair now, aren't we? Yeah. And we need our opponent to not block as well as they did. Yeah, we need them to block with 2 guys, but they blocked with 3, and that kind of jammed us up. So, what looks good in a matchup like this? Engine Explosive kills a bunch of their guys. I would like all the removal spells we have. That seems good. Ghost Vacuum curtailing their graveyard is fine, but not the most exciting. They do have a bunch of graveyard hate in their deck, so we need to consider our package and if we want to keep it or not. Dauthi Voidwalker just always keeps connecting, but isn't that impressive. Barrowgoyf, on the other hand, slaps pretty hard. I don't believe Daze is particularly useful in this matchup. I'm not a big lover of these Force of Wills either. Like, a lot of these decks don't even run the natural orders anymore. I guess we can... how do I like... The Borrowers are decent enough. The Thoughtseizers are okay, but maybe I prefer Forces to Thoughtseizers. Something like this. I think that looks pretty reasonable. We'll keep the Borrowers in. If our opponent's got some graveyard hate stuff, we can bounce like their permanents. So you can like bounce their Elvish guy. Okay, we'll keep this. We kill Mana Dorks pretty efficiently. We have something for a real threat. We get to kill the Elvish Reclaim before it starts doing its thing. We get to play on basic lands, which is also nice. I don't believe our opponent has Wastelands in the deck. They don't really seem to run Wastelands on natural orders anymore. Do I want to get a Surveyor land and put them to the test? Choke is definitely a thing our opponent can have, though. Undercity Sewers. I'm going to get my Surveyor value. An Underground Sea. I don't think we need that right now. An Entomb. Okay. So I'm more worried about Choke, I think. Which means we get a Swamp here. And then we kill their Hierarch. Like, we might have to Force of Will something, so we can't have the Force of Will ready for the Choke. So just trying to play around as best we can. Makes sense. Alright, another guy that we're going to kill. Excellent. And then a Dryad Arbor as well. I think the Hierarch is a better thing to kill. Okay, we get to Brainstorm first as well. Although, the Brainstorm is our blue card. And I don't want to just risk not having a blue card here. I think this is going to be Orcish Bowmasters, kill the Hierarch. Because this also gives Exalted. Our opponent doesn't really draw extra cards, so I don't think the Bowmaster is actually that relevant of a body. If they want to trade a Dryad Arbor for it, I will take that trade. Our opponent agrees with my assessment of the situation. An Elvish Reclaimer. We have an answer for that in hand. Elvish Hierarch. 3 cards left in our opponent's hand. Am I just casting this Entomb right now? I think so. I think I want the Archon of Cruelty here. Just whittle away our opponent's things. A Wasteland. Right, okay. Guess we go for the throat this. Attack with the team. And then we Wasteland the Arbor. We're in a constrict our opponent's resources, beat them down sort of game. If we draw another blue card, then we can happily Brainstorm and try and get ourselves an Archon of Cruelty. A White of the Reliquary. Is this what we need to counterspell? How big is it? There's a lot of creatures. I think this is where we're pointing our Force of Will. Okay, we're going to leave this in hand. We can Brainstorm it back later. Opponent's on a 3-turn clock. But a lot of their creatures will block our advances here. So they can hardcast an Endurance here. Just under white. Okay, so this one's bigger than the previous one. 7/7. That's large, isn't it? And they can start turning this guy into some sort of funky land. A Murktide Regent. Sure. Wasteland, go for throat, Entomb, and then we just get rid of some lands. So 6/6, doesn't kill on its own. Needs to attack twice. However, we could attack with everything here and force through enough damage on the next turn. But they will have the ability to go and get Talon Gates. And if they have an Echoing Deeps, they can do the same play twice. They might even have 2 copies of Talon Gates. Alright, removal is off. So they're going to attack with their Vigilance guy. I'm going to take 9, I think. Actually, no, I don't take 9 here. We chump block with one of these guys. Because we want to be able to reanimate the Archon of Cruelty if we draw a Reanimate. Bricking out on land, not really where I want to be. So this comes in for 6. Are they going to Talon Gates it? Goodbye, Ignoble Hierarch. Hello, Talon Gates. Our guy gets phased out for a turn. Again, we're keeping these cards in hand for Brainstorm purposes. We can just fix our entire hand and just be away. Now, our removal is not going to be particularly good. It'll make them sacrifice lands, but they didn't really care about that. Yep, 9-power guy. We're going to block with our Bowmasters again. The 2-2 body is better than the 1-1 against our opponent who doesn't draw extra cards. Alright, Murktide Regent is back. Force of Will. Not great. I will play out this land. Can I attack you for lethal damage soon? This isn't lethal damage. They have the Verdant Catacomb. They'd have to crack in order for it to be lethal. Just an endurance for chump block. So if we weren't playing our lands out, we could have had a hard cast Force of Will here. They're going to put the Archon of Cruelty back into our deck. That shuts off one of our best draws here. I think our opponent's doing a very good job of beating us here. They're targeting themselves for the purposes of Green Sun Zenith. That is... Okay, so they're putting the Talon Gates back in their deck is what they're doing. I see. That shrinks their White of the Reliquary substantially, though. Alright, they are chump blocking here. So we don't have to block this white anymore. They're going to use the white to sacrifice this and go and find a land. No? They could have sacrificed it and got a land there. I wonder what that's an 8 of. Okay, so now our Murktide Regent is lethal, but we know they have 1 Talon Gates in their library. And they didn't sacrifice the Dried Arbor. That could have been another reason just to put more creatures in the graveyard to make the white bigger. So white comes in here as a 4. We can take 4. That puts us to 12. That's still perfectly fine for what we're trying to accomplish with our Reanimate. A Tamiyo. Okay, so in comes the Murktide. I will play this land out so we can hardcast a Force of Will. I don't think I'm playing the Tamiyo out here. Alright, opponent's on 5. We have a lethal Murktide. We know they only have 1 Talon Gates in their deck because they had to Endurance to shuffle it in. They're drawing off the top. Now we have a Force of Will to counter any spells. I will block this time. We have any sort of edict effects covered here. Alright, Murktide Regent, are you enough? No cards in hand. I'm going to pitch cast this Force of Will so we can still cast the Barrowgoyf if something goes wrong. Alright, we tied the matchup. That was tough. Our opponent played that one really well. What are we doing here? The Ghost Vacuum is something I'm not interested in, but I think we're just going in again. I like just disrupting our opponent as best we can. And then also having this big payoff. Now, they do have things like Endurance we need to worry about. But the plan is just so strong. Like, Atraxa and Archon of Cruelty are just very much the best things you can be doing a lot of the time. This one doesn't seem great to me. Let's mulligan this one. Like, Tamiyo's fine, but then what are we doing? Wasteland Go for the Throat is okay. This isn't very good. I think I'm going to go to 5. Okay. Murktide Regent is a problem for later. Archon of Cruelty can go away as well. I was considering doing like the Brainstorm Surveil land trick, but it just didn't seem worth it here. No 1-drop from our opponent. That is unexpected. A Ponder. Let's Ponder. I don't believe our opponent has Wastelands. Entomb is pretty good here. I don't really want this other Reanimate if the Entomb doesn't work, though. Probably could have put the land in hand instead to hide the Entomb from any potential Thoughtseizes. But if they had a Thoughtseize, they would have fight it on 1. But there's no reason they can't draw a Thoughtseize. So we're going to be doing like Entomb, and we're going to get blown out by an Endurance. We're going to trade 2 for 2, and then we're going to work on playing a Barrowgoyf game. Still in Safekeeper, sure. Archon of Cruelty. Reanimate the Archon. Our opponent's going to pitch 2 cards, and we're going to trade evenly 2 for 2. If they don't, though, the upside here is enormous. Okay, so there is the Dried Arbor. There goes the Graveyard. 2 for 2. Not a great exchange, but a reasonable exchange. And now we can start working towards our Barrowgoyf plan. Our opponent doesn't really have much in the way of removal. Getting him the beats with the old 1-1. Would love to draw a land. That's the best draw in our deck. Land. It's a land. I'll take it. Get in there, Barrowgoyf. This becomes a difficult thing for our opponent to shrink. like they can hit themselves and take 2 types out, but then we already have a Wasteland and this Brainstorm and this, so it's going to be big enough to rumble. And once it starts connecting a few times, it really does the work. White of the Reliquary. It's a 3/3. They can obviously grow the Reclaimer instant speed using Safekeeper. I'm going to cast this Brainstorm first. Sheoldred's Edict is pretty good, as it turns out. The Brainstorm on top here. They're just going to take it here. So they already have creature, so we won't add any extra types in. Let's just see if the 4 damage gets us another little friend. No little friends were achieved. I would like our opponent to crack this fetch land and not get a Dryad Arbor before we Sheoldred's Edict here. Right, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. I got rid of a Reclaimer. Interesting. So let's see if they get... So it's just a Dryad Arbor here. So if we wasteland this, they can mess it around. Although if we wasteland this, they can then Sylvan Safekeeper and protect this. So I think we save this as something like Lair of the Hydra. So we can steal our opponent's endurance and shrink their graveyard. There is a Cradle. That's something that I'm pretty interested in smashing down. I'm going to do it now they're in combat. Okay, we'll take the 5. Our creature does a lot of damage. And has Death Touch. A Murktide Regent, you say? Okay. Let's bash with the boy. How do you feel about this one, opponent? Is this chump block and then flip it into something else with the Arbor? It's pretty solid. Yep, our opponent agrees. Don't want them to get a Bojuka Bog here. It is a Bojuka Bog. And they're hitting our graveyard, sure. That is not what I wanted to see. Do I want to shrink their graveyard with this Animate Dead? Or do I want to rely on Barrowgoyf being a good thorough creature? So we take this out. This becomes a 2/2. The endurance can kind of deal with it. And blocks. I don't really mind taking 5 though. Sure. I'm going to kind of leave the Animate Dead because if we draw an Entomb, it's very good. And if this connects because they don't want to trade something, then we end up in a pretty solid spot because we might be able to put something good in the graveyard. Even just another Barrowgoyf is really solid. I guess the one thing we don't want to see here is our opponent endurance themselves. So we'd like to find something so we can... If our Barrowgoyf at least has 1 power, that's all that matters, because then it will trade into the white. Witherbloom command. Target player mills 3 cards. Okay. So they're going to drain life for 2? Sure. They're going to get back... I'm not sure the Snuff Out is great here. Like, it kills Murktide, but... Okay, there is the Cradle again. And then there's another white. Understood. So we might be getting to the stage where we want to deal with this. But they can't... If we draw an Entomb now, they don't have any... Actually, that's not true. They have White the Reliquary. They showed us they don't have an Echoing Deeps earlier. So... Okay, we didn't draw the thing we wanted anyway. So we know they don't have an Echoing Deeps, so they can't get another Bojuka Bog. So this guy just gets to crash. I play the land out here because we can maybe grow our guy. So we're not going to be able to grow this guy enough anyway, so we may as well just take it. Gaining 1 extra life might be relevant. Let's get this Undercity Sewers. An Entomb. Okay. I will take that Entomb for next turn. So we clean a guy off the board. Right, they're just sacking that guy. So we don't even clean the guy off the board. Well, we kind of do clean the guy off the board, but they go and get something. Okay, so next time we get Atraxa and dig for Wasteland to take out the Hydra. How much damage is this, actually? Are we dead? 7. Oh, yeah, we are. We're super dead. Yeah, our opponent played that one better than we did. We should have we could have Animate Deaded their guy, but then it's just a chump block, and that's not very good either. Yeah, GG's. Our opponent outplayed us quite well there. All right, 4 rounds in, 1 to go, a 4-1 on the line. Let's go. I'll take an Island Ponder, I guess. I'll keep this one. Our opponent's mulligan to 5. And it took quite a while to do that, so maybe they're multi-queuing, which means they're more likely to be playing a fast deck like Oops or something to be grinding. So it might die on turn 1 here. Let's see. Lotus Petal. Dark Ritual. Garden Frailties. Goblin Charbelch. Okay. So we're not dead on turn 1. Okay, so we need to Thoughtseize our opponent off of mana on turn 1. And then hopefully... Alright, we'll take that mana away from them. And then we can Brazen Borrower this back if we draw a land. Land, please. Very much want a land here. Not a land. Okay. Does that mean we're pondering here? Or we're brainstorming? I think brainstorm is actually better. Alright. These cards don't really do what we need. I don't really want to show my opponent reanimate. So put the island on top for next turn. It should just be the reanimate that we mill over here. But I think if our opponent knows that we're doing that, they bring in ley lines and that makes things a bit more awkward. I guess we don't have to mill anything over if we play the Undercity Sewers, do we? Or we could just bury the Undercity Sewers for later, but Thoughtseize isn't really doing very much for us right now. I guess we can mill over the Thoughtseize, can't we? So we need our opponent to not draw a land. Oh, we should have put the Borrower on top, because if they draw a Thoughtseize, we're dead. Don't have a land or a mana of any kind in your deck that has lots of mana that isn't lands. Alright. Our opponent has paused, which makes me think that we're not dead. Big fan of not being dead. Let's ponder. Force of Will, that's what we want to see. So we have to hope they didn't draw a Spirit Guide here. Alright, they did not draw a Spirit Guide, and now I think we win this game. Tough. Sorry if that whistle if it was loud. A Jack-O-Lantern. Be my guest. Just make a big Murktide and try and win the game quickly. Seems like a reasonable thing to do. I could reanimate their Sim Spirit Guide. That gives us a 2-turn clock, but we already have the Borrower and stuff anyway. I'm just going to pass. I don't want them to see the Reanimate. I don't want them boarding in Leyline of the Void against us. I like the ability to Atraxa and get like a big... Alright. Somehow, we are the Blue-Black Reanimator deck and we are the good guys this time. Okay, so I would like some Force of Negation, some Consign to Memories. I don't think the Ghost Vacuum helps very much. Dauthi Voidwalker does, though. If they go for like a fair creature plan, I think we just beat that by having like a bunch of really sweet creatures that we get to leverage. Tamiyo is way too slow. Ponder's probably also pretty slow, but we do need some amount of them. Maybe this is the Bowmasters go. I mean, keep our blue count high. Do I want Ghost Vacuum? It rarely does anything against our opponent's deck. I just don't think it's worth boarding in here. The Dauthi Voidwalker is going to be our plan. Alright, I believe in the power of Borrower, Atraxa, Archon of Cruelty, and Force of Will to beat their fair creature plan. I don't think we can keep this one, even though it does have the Force. Can't keep this one either, it's got no lands. Do I believe a Thoughtseize? Our opponent has kept 7, so this probably doesn't work. We're going to 3 cards, or we're just going to hope that we can get them with a Thoughtseize here. This is awful. Alright, so we keep some cards here. I guess we can keep the Ponder instead. Oh, I like... If we get rid of this and this, then all we need is a land, and then we can Entomb Animate Dead. Okay, Chancellor of the Annex. Are we dead on turn 1? Seems possible. Okay, they got another piece of mana. That was a very quick choice, so they're probably looking at winning the game this turn. And we know they've got a... Oh, they exiled a Sim Spirit Guide to do this. They got another piece of mana over there. They do. Okay, let's see how they've sideboarded at least. Pact of Negation. Okay, cool. Some fun interactive magic right there. A lot of people dislike the Ipsal Spells deck, and I don't blame them. What are we doing? I think we just go back in. Being on the play and maybe having a land at some point would be nice. I don't know if our opponent had a hand that beat what we were laying down. Like the Chancellor is a pretty good way of getting around us having anything on turn 1. Force of Will, Dauthi Voidwalker, Brainstorm, Daze. All right, we keep these. All right, I'm getting a little bit of lag here. All right. So we can Brainstorm to protect our hand. We can Brainstorm to find a second land to make sure we nail the Dauthi Voidwalker. All right, once upon a time, you're revealing an Elvish Spirit Guide. Good to know about. Okay, the land is untapped. That's not good for us. Cabal Therapy, you say? Do I think they can go off this turn? I don't think so. You can Cabal Therapy me. They're going to name Force of Will. Then we're going to Brainstorm, hit a land, play Dauthi Voidwalker with Daze hanging around. Force of Will. Get out of here, Force of Will. We need a land in the top 3 cards of our library. Now, our opponent might still be able to win this turn. Maybe the Daze dissuades them. I don't know. Let's go and get ourselves an Underground Sea. Let's cast a Brainstorm. We found the land. And it wasn't the island, thankfully. So, if they Cabal Therapy us... If they have another Cabal Therapy and take the Daze, that's bad for us. But if they have just any other discard spell, we want to keep the Daze in hand. So I guess we go Animate Dead and then put the Ponder on top. Alright, Dauthi Voidwalker. Let's shut down your graveyard. Garden of Freyalise. Once upon a time, sure. This is not where I'm going to fight with the Daze, I don't think. A Boggart Trawler. Sure. So we can get more pressure in, or we can ponder. If we ponder and find another land, then we get to do both. Okay, I obviously want the Force of Negation here, more than anything else. So I think we bury the Underground Sea, keep the Wasteland, and the Force. Chat with the Dauthi. We are ahead in life total, so if they just start playing guys, we beat that plan. So we have Force of Negation and Daze ready for our opponent's turn. I think we're in a very good spot here. And our opponent has scooped it up. So that is the end of the league. We finished with a 4-1. We lost a very close couple of games to the Cradle Control deck. I think our opponent played better than us and really deserved it. Maybe we could go in and play that one differently and we can take that one down. We absolutely obliterated the tempo decks. Let's talk about the deck. So, it is my belief that this is the best tempo deck you can play, purely because of how powerful these cards are. Like, Entomb, I've banged on about Entomb a lot. Like, if you look at any other tutor in the format, nothing comes close to the rate you get on this. Not only does it find you the card, but it finds you the card into a place where you want it to be. It's just really strong and allows you to play this really tight package instead of having to be a dedicated Reanimator deck. And, you know, this amount of fair stuff is plenty of fair stuff, to be honest. And we were doing a really good job of doing like the tempo-y fair plan. And in the tempo matchups, we just get to gut all of our counter magic and just play more threats. And then our opponent has to answer all of our threats while we have more removal as well. And then they're just going to get overloaded because you can't have a bunch of Force of Will to deal with this, but then also be okay to deal with all like the Barrowgoyf and stuff. So I think this deck is really, really strong. I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers kept trending upwards. Like I said at the start, it's currently the 3rd best performing deck in the format, and I would expect it to improve those numbers and become the 2nd best performing deck with Oops remaining top because that deck just seems unassailable right now. Oh, yes, we did beat the Oops All Spells deck, but you know that deck kind of invalidates a lot of non-blue decks, which is why you're seeing many of the top decks being like tempo and blue decks and stuff that can interact with Oops All Spells really. But suffice to say, I think that this Blue-Black Reanimator deck is really good, and I think they should have banned Entomb and left us with Troll. Because if you were playing a deck like this, where instead of doing like Entomb and then reanimating like these big guys, if you were just reanimating Troll of Khazad-dûms, that feels a lot fairer, and that just feels like something that's quite easy to do. And then the full-on Reanimate decks can just draw and discard and like self-unmask themselves to get the big scary monsters in. It doesn't feel like you should be able to play a tempo deck and also have the big monsters. You should have to play like the little monsters that put themselves into the graveyard, or have a deck dedicated to putting these in. That's my thoughts on the topic, which I reiterate often. I don't think it's quite to the level where we should be calling for the Entomb ban again just yet, but I do think they made a mistake on the last one, and I don't know when or if we'll ever see that rectified. But yeah, I would imagine this deck is going to become the 2nd best deck in the format within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this one. Well done to Primetime for winning a Legacy Challenge with this deck. It just seems that whatever you do, you can't put the Reanimate deck down while it has Entomb. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 5k subscribers. I think I'm about 100 away now, so we're getting real close. Alright, thank you. Goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.